Hello everyone, welcome back to another Maya 2015 tutorial. This is the last video for our decorative box. It's located inside your Introduction to Maya 2015 handbook. The book doesn't actually go as far as we are going, but that doesn't mean we can't continue to pursue this a little further. Right now, if you look at this box, we had it textured and we modeled it all out, and I added in. Essentially, this is just a cube that I deleted off to the faces in the top face here, just so I can have a ground plane and some back walls, because I want to do a little bit of a batch render on this, and I don't need to actually do a batch rendered animation. I just want a still image. If you guys don't know how to do that, all you have to do is just go to Create, Polygon Primitives, create yourself a new cube, scale it up like that, and go to these faces over here, select those, delete them, and then you have something like I have. And you'll have to reverse the normals on because the normals are facing out currently. You want them facing in. So just go to normals, reverse. There you go. Just delete that guy off. Sorry, I have one. Okay, so to do a 3-point light setup, the idea is that you want to have what's called your point light, but we're going to call it a front light because inside of Maya there's actually a type of light called a point light that kind of works like a light bulb, but we're going to be using one called a directional light that kind of emulates the sun. It goes infinitely in whatever direction the arrows are pointing at, and that's the one we want to use. So we're going to go to Lights, underneath the Create tab, and we'll go to let's see here, directional light. There we go. We'll just translate this one up, and you'll have to decide on what angle you want this light to be at, where your front's going to be. I think this is a good angle, and it just doesn't really matter where it's positioned at, because like I said, it goes infinitely in all directions, so technically I could leave all three of them in the same spot and just say which way the lights are going, but just for aesthetics purposes and visual cues, I'm just going to position the lights as if they were actual lights right there. So, not that it's necessary. Alright, so I have my light positioned. If you look at the directional light shape 1 tab here, you can see that it tells me I have a directional light. The color right now is white. Intensity is at 1. Those things are all fine for me. I want to turn off the rest of the lights though, and which is the default light that my sets every scene up with. We want to use just the lights we're creating right now so we can accurately light this thing to where it looks decent and not just lit from whatever angle you're looking at it. Also, we want to activate shadows so we can see how our lights are casting shadows. So I'll turn on this icon here, and that will turn off the default light and just turn on the lights that we're creating. And I'll also turn on the icon right next to it that will cause shadows to be cast. Okay, that looks decent. Alright, so the first light is being cast straight on at a 3/4 type angle. But now we come to the point where we need to have our other two lights. So your rear light is usually in direct opposition of your point light or front light. And so I'm just going to duplicate this one. I'll hit Control D. Now it's been duplicated. All of a sudden it got much more bright. And right now the light, or my directional handle, is running with my my light direction. That's just a translation function that needs to be changed. Right now it's set to object. I'll set it to local and I'll change the handle to where it's not running with the direction of the light. Alright, so I'll just push this one over here and onto this side. Now I want this light to be in direct opposition to this light, so I'm just going to rotate it to where now it's facing the other way. Okay, so now we have two different lights, but you guys may have already kind of noticed there's a bit of a problem here, and the reason that we're having a problem is because I have these walls here that are receiving the light and not letting any of the light to actually hit my box. Now there's a couple different methods. Some are more advanced than others. There's there's a function called light linking we can do. That's a little bit more complex, but I don't really think that that's going to be necessary for this case. I think that we'll save light linking for a different lesson. This one I'm going to show you how we can just go ahead and use this without light linking. You should be able to just select this object here, and underneath its attributes, so we have to get out of our tool settings with our attribute, and you'll see down underneath the Shape 2 tab for this particular object, there's a Render Stats tab. Just go ahead and open this one up. You'll see two options here. It says Cast Shadows and Receive Shadows. Just go ahead and turn both those off. And that makes it to where the light just goes right through it. Okay. Alright. So now we've solved one problem and created another one. Now you can see that the light is in fact lighting both sides of it. But now we have shadows going one way and then shadows going the other. So that is a problem all by itself, because the sun doesn't create shadows contrary to itself. You can have other light sources that can do that, but not with sunlight, if that's what I'm trying to emulate here. So I need to adjust my light here to where it's not casting shadows, or I can do something similar to the box like I did to the back wall, which would be the easiest way to go. But if I did that, then I would not be getting a shadow going this way. So I actually need to mess with the light and not the box. If I was to try to do what I did with those outside walls and turn off cast or receive shadows for this box, then I wouldn't get shadows going the other way either. So let's go ahead and look at our light. Okay, now you see the one option here says shadows. Let's go ahead and adjust our shadows here, and right now it says use depth map shadows. And if you go down a little further, you'll see one that says use ray trace shadows. So if we're using depth map shadows, then I would uncheck this box. But since we're using ray trace shadows, I have to uncheck this one. Okay, now you see that the shadows disappeared from my rear light. That's good. Alright, second problem is that the light is even on both sides. So a rear light is not supposed to be as bright as the front light. So a little bit of creative license is going to come in here. It's going to be what you decide looks right. I usually go to 50% or less. So let's try 0.5 and see how that looks. That looks okay. Let's maybe go to 0.3. Because what the idea here is that you want to be able to see the back side of it, but you don't want it to be anywhere near as bright as the front. Okay, that looks okay. Now, the way we have this angle is it's very split, so it looks like, bright light, lots of shadow. We could almost get away with this just fine, but typically there's a third light called a fill light, and that comes in from the side. And for this box, it doesn't really matter so much to have a fill light, but I'm going to put one in there just to emphasize how a three-point light setup works. And that makes it to where everything that's on the inside or on that may be hidden is also illuminated. That way, you don't have anything hidden. With virtual lighting, things that aren't being hit by light aren't lit up. So you have to make sure that everything has some kind of light on it so that it's visible and not just completely hidden, unless that's the look you're going for. Okay, so now that I have this adjustment done, so it's not casting shadows, its intensity is lowered, I can duplicate this one, and all of these settings will retain on the duplicate. So I'll hit Control D, duplicate that one, and let's move it off to the side here. And this one here, I'm going to make it to where it is kind of halfway in between where the front and rear light is. And there's a little bit of play on how you want this one to be arced. If you want it to be facing down or facing up. Typically on a fill light, it's more horizontal. That way, you're getting the side filled in. So that's what I'm going to do with this guy. Make sure that's filled on the side. Okay. And I'm going to lower its intensity from 0.3 to, let's go with 0.2. That looks better. So it's dark on one side, a little bit lighter over there, and then bright where the sun's actually. Okay, so that's good. Happy with that. All right, so I'm done with lighting, but we want to extend our naming conventions down the chain. So let's go ahead and call our directional light 1. We'll call that our front light, front directional light, and we'll call this one over here our side directional light, or actually we'll call it fill directional light, and then we'll call this one over here our rear directional light. Okay, that's good. And let's go ahead and make sure we're naming our stuff in our scene too. So call this one mesh ground, and I'll call this mesh walls. And now if I look at my outliner, everything should be named P cube 1. I don't know what that is. Let's get rid of that. Okay, everything else is good. All right, so my project is good. I can go ahead and save now. File, save scene. Okay, yeah, go ahead and finish that off. All right, so now let's look at batch rendering. So batch rendering, we got to make sure our batch render settings are done before we actually go and jump into an actual batch render. So the batch render settings are located up at the top right here. You'll see this little movie take with little wheels on the side of it. Go ahead and open that up. Now, you can use different renderers here to do your batch render. You can use Maya software or you can use Mental Ray. Both do a great job. Mental Ray is more specific to Mental Ray shaders, but it'll render Maya shaders just the same, just at a little bit higher quality. For this particular project, now in the past we used animations, so we had to go from single frame to name.number.extension so that it would render out all the frames for that animation. Now we need to do a single frame render, so we're going to leave this on single frame. We're not going to mess with this one at all. Right now, we're not going to be doing an animation, so I don't really need a IFF file rendered out. So I'm going to change this one to from my IFF to, let's go with a JPEG. Or you can go with a PSD, it doesn't really matter. All file types you can open easily in a Photoshop type program. Okay. Since we're only doing a single frame, all these start and end frame things we don't have to deal with. We will use a perspective camera to do our render off of, and we'll leave it at HD 540, and that looks okay. And if you look up here where it says where the product path and where it's going to render out to, you can see that it's going to render out over here. Make sure that says wherever your project folder is at, otherwise it'll put it in a place you won't be able to find it. Okay, let's go ahead and do a test render, make sure this looks okay. And if Maya renderer is having issues with shadows, you might just want to have to bounce over to Mental Ray and use that one instead. But it shouldn't give you any kind of issues. Okay, so here's my test render. Looks like my software is having issues with shadows again. So I'm going to just bounce over and use Mental Ray since I don't want to hassle with seeing what's not checked to make Maya do its thing. Well, actually, let me take a look real quick. Yeah, I know what it is. Edge anti-aliasing, low quality. Let's put it on just highest quality. That will bring on the shadows, I'm pretty sure. Let's go ahead and retry that. No, that still isn't working. No? Okay. Turn on ray tracing. That should have done it, but there we go. So underneath the Maya settings, I had to make sure that you which one was it? Turn on ray tracing quality and just bump the settings from low quality up. So if you are having problems with Maya software, just jump over to Mental Ray. Mental Ray doesn't really have, it's all kind of just battle tested, and you just make sure it's set on unified sampling, and redo the render with mental array, and it'll come out almost identical. It takes a little longer than mental array though. Okay, so there you go. So that's what it will look like when I render this out. I'll go ahead and kill this. That's my render preview. Okay, so now those are render previews. They're not actual batch renders. So for us to actually do a batch render, you have to switch your tabs here from polygons over to rendering, and now you'll see this tab here. It says renderer, and you just have to go down to batch render and just click on this guy, and it'll ask you to save before it starts, and you say okay, go ahead and do your thing. And now you'll see down here it says rendering with mental array, or if you're using Maya software, it'll say rendering with Maya software. Either way, it's going to render out your image, and then it's going to stick your rendered image into your project folder where you had the path destination to. This sometimes just takes a minute for mental array to get going, or Maya software, and then once it gets going, they'll just take 20 or 30 seconds to render off that image. It'll do a little percentage counter on there, and you'll be good to go. So when you have your final image, if you are in my class, just submit your scene file with your final image, and that's what we'll be grading on. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. If you're in my class, you can also just send me an email. So I'm not going to wait for mental array to finish off its rendering, but you can see down here that it's doing its thing. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you guys in the next lesson.